At a Royal Air Force base in Scotland, the team prepares for an emergency after learning that a transatlantic aircraft has been hijacked. Colonel Drew Morn is summoned to take charge, arriving serious and focused. He's informed that the pilot and co-pilot are presumed dead, and that one of the passengers appears on Germany's terrorist watch list. The team establishes contact with the aircraft and orders it to land. Drew Morn demands a closer inspection and tries to communicate with the crew. Suddenly, movement appears near one of the plane's doors. A parachute drops, and a small boy emerges. 2 RAF trucks race to collect him. The severity of the terrorist incident becomes undeniable. Drew Morn spots an unfamiliar face in the cockpit and radios a warning, insisting that any sudden moves will be met with gunfire. He orders the stranger to stay seated with hands raised. The man insists he isn't a terrorist and begs for a chance to explain. A translator is sent to speak with the boy, Elias, but he is too shocked to respond. The story then flashes back to the day before. In a hotel room, Elias's mother, Nadia, prepares for her upcoming flight. She speaks with her doctor in New York about a mysterious illness she is battling. Later, Elias calls to let her know he has already checked in their luggage. That evening, they meet at the airport, pass through security, and wait for boarding. Nadia slips away to the restroom, where she prepares her medication. Meanwhile, Elias chats with a man named Farid until Nadia returns, and together they board the plane. Once on board, a flight attendant offers coffee to the pilots before tending to a difficult first-class passenger with help from a colleague named Ebel. The plane departs from Germany, bound for the United States. Nadia, seated with Elias, writes in her notebook and finds an old photograph of her with her husband. Her mind drifts back to a night when their car broke down in a remote area. After her husband left to seek help, she wandered into an abandoned house, followed a trail of blood into the basement, discovered her husband's lifeless body, and was bitten by a vampire just before dawn. Back in the present, unease stirs among the passengers. Ball, one of the hijackers, causes a disturbance. A sky marshal intervenes, but Ball pulls a knife and kills a second marshal, while another passenger incapacitates the first. Curtis, another hijacker, hunts down the third marshal and returns with his weapon. Ball murders the last marshal in front of Carl, another member of the group who appears visibly shaken. Nadia senses that something is wrong. Ball brandishes a firearm, forcing passengers to the rear of the plane. Meanwhile, Berg seizes control of the cockpit, speaks with the co-pilot, and throws the pilot's body out of the plane. He declares that he is now in command and orders the passengers to sit still with their hands on the seats. Yuri tampers with the flight recorder and informs Berg that the co-pilot has changed course. Elias studies the plane's layout to help his mother avoid exposure to sunlight. Curtis escorts Farid to the front, while Carl struggles to keep Ball under control. Elias slips from his seat, and Nadia follows, but Ball shoots her in front of her son and then takes Elias hostage. Berg scolds Ball for acting without orders and uses the violence to terrify the passengers. Nadia awakens in the cargo hold. Hearing dogs barking, she climbs through a hatch while the hijackers force Farid and 2 others to record a staged terrorism video. Nadia hides under a vehicle, but when Curtis and Yui search for bomb-making materials, Yui discovers her. She kills him and feeds on a dog to regain strength. Later, Farid quietly returns to sit beside Elias. Nadia, now fully transformed, tries to medicate herself but overhears the hijackers discussing a countdown. She drinks Yui's blood for more strength and makes her way toward the cockpit. The hijackers threaten to release gas if passengers resist. They soon find Yui's body beside the dead dog, but Nadia has staged this as a decoy. Panic breaks out among the passengers as Nadia emerges, urging anyone with flying experience to step forward. A man volunteers, and she guides him to the controls. Farid explains the hijackers' true plan, while others prepare to parachute out of the aircraft in diving suits. The volunteer pilot confirms the autopilot is still engaged. Nadia watches through the security cameras and warns him not to change course until the hijackers are gone. Ball soon realizes she is still alive. He and Berg return, demanding to know where a missing passenger is. They hammer at the cockpit door while Nadia orders the pilot to redirect the plane. Furious at the change in course, Berg kills a passenger and threatens more bloodshed. Ball drags a little girl to the front and begins a countdown to shoot her. Nadia bursts into the cockpit and sinks her fangs into Berg's neck, unleashing chaos. The pilot locks the door behind her. She kills Berg, but moments later, he begins to transform into a vampire himself. Nadia senses it and returns to finish him off with a knife, while Ball watches in shock. She goes back to the cockpit and tells Elias to stay inside, then retreats to the lavatory, where she sees her own transformation worsening. Meanwhile, Ball rifles through her belongings, discovers her notebook, and announces to the others that she is a vampire. He produces a UV light to prove it. Nadia's skin begins to burn, and memories of her past flood back, how difficult it had been to care for baby Elias while struggling with her hunger for blood. She remembers a night when Elias wouldn't stop crying. Overcome with frustration, she growled, her fangs threatening to emerge, but she forced herself to pull back, unwilling to harm him. Later, she returned to the place where she had first been turned and encountered the vampire's father. He admitted that his son could never control his bloodlust and, believing that vampires brought nothing but pain, he shot Nadia. Back aboard the plane, Ball starts crafting a wooden stake. Elias leaves the cockpit, finds his mother in the lavatory, and helps her just as the hijackers return. The pilot quickly locks himself away again. Nadia confronts Ball, but he shines a UV light on her, burning her skin and knocking her to the floor. Collapsing, she watches him fill a syringe with her blood, intending to inject himself. Before he can, Elias appears with a gun and points it at him. Ball lunges, the weapon discharges, and a window shatters. Bastien reports that the plane now has only 10 minutes of oxygen left. Nadia helps Elias into an oxygen mask, seizes the gun, and shoots Ball. Though injured, he escapes. In the cockpit, the pilot collapses from lack of air. Nadia entrusts Elias to Farid, begging him to protect her son, then races after Ball. She finds him inside an armored car on board and opens fire, but bullets do nothing. Ball injects himself with her vampire blood and begins to transform. Realizing she must stop him before he grows too strong, Nadia douses the car with fuel, sets it ablaze, and watches him burn, remembering the old vampire's warning that their kind must not spread. Smoke begins to pour out, drawing the hijackers' attention. Nadia quickly extinguishes the flames and returns to the cockpit. The hijackers open fire, sending passengers into a panic. Farid flees with Elias as Ball, now fully transformed, emerges terrifying and powerful. He sinks his teeth into Curtis, turning him as well. Nadia locks them inside the cargo hold, but Elias cries out that the passengers now see her as a threat. Farid reassures him, though chaos spreads when someone fires a shot. Nadia defends herself, torn between fighting and protecting her son. Elias pleads with her not to hurt Farid. Hearing the vampires clawing to escape, Nadia bolts back and manages to lock Ball behind a door. Farid tries to help, but is bitten. Another man intervenes, shooting Ball to prevent the infection from spreading. Nadia cuts into Farid's hand to free him. Curtis, now turned, climbs back into the cabin. Nadia fights both him and Ball, saving a flight attendant before returning to the frightened passengers. Farid speaks on her behalf, assuring everyone that Nadia is now fighting with them. Together, they head to the cockpit. With fuel running dangerously low, they scramble to find the nearest airport. Elias and Farid persuade Nadia to hide in the darkness beneath the cockpit, while Bastien remains with them. The pilot finally contacts a British airbase, reporting the hijacking but explaining that the surviving hijackers are trapped in the hold. Meanwhile, Elias searches through his mother's medication. The passengers grow restless as they hear the vampires snarling below. A wounded man, desperate, decides to be bitten in hopes of being saved. Instead, he unleashes Ball, who kills him instantly and begins attacking others. Nadia and Farid realize the situation is spiraling out of control. People rush the cockpit, trying to break in, but Bastien struggles to hold the door shut. Nadia knows they cannot land the plane, or the vampires will escape. Farid proposes a grim solution: land the plane and then detonate it remotely. They head toward the fuel tank to plant explosives, only to discover there is no timer. Nadia decides she must remain behind to destroy the plane after everyone else has left. She tells Elias that someone else must set the charge, then plunges into the hold with a UV light to search the hijackers for a timer. The vampires pursue her, forcing her to fight. She barely escapes but drops the UV light in the struggle. Realizing her son is in danger, Nadia returns to the cockpit, asking Bastien if the plane is still on autopilot and if the airbase can land it. Receiving confirmation, she turns to Farid and makes him promise to protect Elias, knowing she will not survive. She then sinks her fangs into Bastien, embracing her vampire nature fully. At that moment, Ball lunges for Elias. Nadia bursts in and battles him fiercely, but he manages to bite her. Thinking quickly, Elias opens the cargo hatch. Nadia seizes the chance, shoving Ball out of the plane. As the hatch opens wide, Farid tilts the aircraft, allowing sunlight to pour in, burning Ball to ashes. Elias offers his mother some of his own blood, reviving her. She awakens, struggling to resist the urge to feed on him, then pushes him away and returns to the hold, determined to finish what she started. When the plane lands at the RAF base, Elias pleads with a translator to help Farid, but she refuses. He insists that Farid must be saved before sunset, or the vampires will slaughter the soldiers. Farid is sedated and carried onto a stretcher. Colonel Drumorn and his men decide to wait while the creatures inside feed on the bodies. Farid desperately warns them, but they dismiss him and shoot him, dragging him away from the plane. Meanwhile, Elias is placed in an ambulance. He secretly sedates the paramedic, takes his teddy bear, and slips away, returning to the plane. Inside, the soldiers are overwhelmed by the vampires. Farid catches sight of Elias but cannot call out to him. The boy watches in horror as his mother feeds on a soldier, realizing she has become something beyond saving. Calling out her name, he understands she is no longer the mother he knew. With heartbreaking resolve, Elias detonates the explosives, destroying the aircraft in a massive fireball. Colonel Drumorn and his team stand in shock as the wreckage burns. Amid the debris, Farid finds Elias alive, and the two embrace tightly. At last, they are the only survivors of the harrowing nightmare. If you enjoy thrilling movie recaps like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.